There was a Jew named Yankel who owned a bakery in Crown Heights. Yankel somehow survived the concentration camps and eventually emigrated to the United States. And after settling in America, he was once asked how he was able to survive and come out alive when so many others had perished. Yankel said he attributed his survival to a particular incident that took place when he was just a teenager. He was on one of those boxcar trains that the Nazis would use to transport Jews to the camps. The conditions of those cars were just terrible. And sometimes the Nazis would leave those trains unattended overnight, sometimes for days without food or water. And of course there were no blankets to keep anyone warm. One night, Yankel found himself in a boxcar filled with fellow Jews being taken to Auschwitz. It was freezing cold. The Nazis just left the train sitting there overnight. And next to Yankel was this elderly Jew. He was actually a beloved gentleman who Yankel recognized from his own hometown. And the man looked awful. He was shivering from head to toe. And so I wrapped my arms around him, Yankel described. I began to warm him by rubbing his arms and his legs, his neck and his face. I begged him all night to be strong and to hang on. And I just kept telling him it would be better in the morning. Somehow, and I don't know how, I kept this old man warm. But I was exhausted. And I myself was freezing. My fingers were numb, but I didn't stop rubbing heat onto this man's body all night. The hours dragged on, but finally the night passed, the morning came, the sun began to shine, and I felt a little warmth in that car. A little sunlight entered, and I could see, and I looked around, and to my utter horror, all I could see were frozen bodies. There was a deathly silence. Nobody in the car made it through the night. Only 2 people survived, me and the old man. The old man survived because someone kept him warm, and I survived because I was warming someone else. This is one of the secrets and one of the most profound teachings of Judaism, that when you warm someone else, you warm yourself. We so often think that when we go out of our way to help someone, we're just doing something altruistic for another person. We don't realize how much we benefit and how much helping other people is something we so desperately need. But it goes even further than that. As I mentioned in my new book, The 40-Day Challenge, the Talmud teaches, Ner le'echad, ner le'mea. A candle for one is a candle for 100. The same light that helps one person can help 100. When we create light for another individual, we transform the lives of everyone around us. The same applies to spiritual growth and to Torah study. Because when we share wisdom with others, we ourselves benefit. And this is what the great Rambam, Maimonides, meant when he said, HaTalmidim mosifim chachmat harav, that students increase their teacher's wisdom. And Maimonides goes on to quote the sages of the Talmud who said, quote, much wisdom have I learned from my teachers, more than that from my colleagues, but from my disciples, more than from all of them combined. I can tell you from personal experience, when a teacher gives a class, it doesn't just benefit the students. Sharing knowledge and wisdom helps the teacher better understand, better appreciate the material he or she is teaching. And so giving to other people, whether it's helping keep someone else alive physically or inspiring another person spiritually, accomplishes as much for the person giving as it does for the one receiving. And so this year, as we all prepare for the high holidays, ask yourself, who do you know that can use some extra attention? Is there someone who can use a donation or perhaps a loan to help them get through a hard time? Who in your orbit can benefit from the warmth and from the wisdom that you have to give? And if you're feeling a little self-absorbed these days, remember what my esteemed teacher, Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb of blessed memory, once said in a sermon. He said, and I quote, the more concerned we are with our own happiness, the less likely we are to achieve it. And he quoted from the Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot, Im ein ani li mili. If I am for myself, who am I? True simcha, true happiness is attained only when I lose myself, only when my concern is with making others happy. And that's why the mitzvah of simcha, of joy in the Torah, is coupled with the mitzvah to provide joy for the poor, for the widow, and for the orphan. Because to be happy, we have to stop trying to make ourselves happy and start by taking care of others. This is why Maimonides, the great Rambam, wrote that when we celebrate the holiday of Purim by giving gifts to the poor, sending food baskets to our friends, and enjoying a festive meal, the Rambam said, better to increase in your gifts to the poor than increasing in the festive meal or in the sending of food baskets to your friends, because in his words, there is no greater joy and glory than gladdening the heart of poor people, orphans, widows, and strangers. And by the way, modern day findings are in line with these words of Maimonides from almost 1,000 years ago. Sociologists Christian Smith and Hilary Davidson conducted a major study. It took place over a 5-year period, which concluded that the connection between charity and volunteering and one's state of happiness is unmistakable. Smith and Davidson showed how people who are very happy volunteer on average 10 times more than those who are unhappy. Their findings also concluded that there were lower rates of depression among Americans who donated more than 10% of their incomes. And they found that Americans who are more giving in their relationships are more likely to be in excellent health versus those who are not. This explains the central role that tzedakah and chesed, charity and acts of loving kindness, play in Jewish life. Jewish tradition challenges us to give a portion of our annual earnings to those less fortunate, to lend money to those who are in need, to make a bride and groom happy on the day of their wedding, to console a mourner, and to provide hospitality to a stranger. These are the types of giving activities that, when practiced with regularity, produce happiness. It's the same feeling a parent experiences when they so heavily give and invest in their children, or what a teacher feels when his students perform well or a patriot for his country. If volunteering to help someone or a cause in which you believe isn't something you're involved in, make that change now. The irony is that it's the best thing we can do for ourselves. I'm wishing you all a Shana Tova Umetuka. May it be a sweet, happy, and giving year. This is Rabbi Mark Wildes of MGE, and you're watching JTV.